Hi, second grade. Today we are going to be reading from our Reading Street book. So if you don't have that in front of you, please go ahead and get that. We are on page 400. Okay, we are going to be reading Red, White, and Blue, the story of the American flag. Now follow along with your finger as I am reading, okay? The author for this story is John Herman. And the illustrator, that means the person who drew the pictures, is Shannon Sternweiss. Okay, I'm at the bottom of the page now. Genre. Informational text often gives facts about real people, places, and events that reflect history or the traditions of communities. Look for facts as you read. Now remember that a fact is a true piece of information, something that you can prove to be real. That's different from an opinion. An opinion is something that maybe I think, but you don't think it. I might say, oh, dogs are the best pets ever. And that's true for me, but that's just my opinion because you might not think that. Now, a fact is something that I can prove that is real, that is true, okay? I can say 2 + 2 = 4. That's a fact. Okay, so be looking for facts in this story. Keep reading with me. Question of the week. What traditions and celebrations involve our country's flag? That means when you are celebrating something, will you see your country's flag? In what celebrations do you see your country's flag? Now, in this story, they are talking about the flag of the United States. So if you're from the United States, then this is your flag. We're not talking about the flag from the Dominican Republic in this story, but the flag from the United States. Okay, follow along on page 402. We all know the American flag. Its bright colors fly at baseball games. It flies at 4th of July parades. We even see it on clothes. Our flag has lots of nicknames, like Old Glory and the Red, White, and Blue. Sometimes it's called the Stars and Stripes. Why do you think it's called the Stars and Stripes? Because it has stars and stripes. Makes sense. But where did our flag come from? Who decided what it would look like? The truth is that no one knows for sure. Back in the 1700s, America didn't have a flag. It didn't need one. It wasn't even a country yet. Wow. It was just 13 colonies. I'm going to stop right there. Do you know how many states there are in the United States? I'll give you this. More than 13. But back in the 1700s, there were just 13 colonies. They weren't even called states yet. Okay, back to the story. The colonies belonged to England. The English flag flew in towns from New Hampshire to Georgia. But as time went on, the 13 colonies didn't want to belong to England anymore. Americans decided to fight for their freedom. A war began. It was the American Revolution. What was the name of that war? The American Revolution. Now a new flag was needed, an American flag. So why did they need a new flag? They needed a new flag because up until this point, the flag that they were using was the English flag from Britain, and they didn't want to be a part of that anymore. They wanted to break free. They wanted to have freedom. So if they were going to be their own country, that meant they needed their own flag. And then on this page, 403, they give you the names of the original 13 American colonies, and you can read all of those. If you want, you can pause the video to read those. I am going to keep going. I'm on page 404. Ready? Who made our first flag? Some people say it was a woman named Betsy Ross. Maybe you've heard of her. What was her name? Betsy Ross. Betsy Ross owned a sewing shop in Philadelphia. She was famous for her sewing. The story is that one day a general came to see her. The general was George Washington. He was the head of the American Army. General Washington wanted a new flag. It would make his soldiers feel like a real army fighting for a real country. He wanted Betsy Ross to make this flag. He drew a picture of what he wanted. Oh, and look at the bottom of the page. That's the first American flag. That's what it looked like back then. Is that what it looks like right now? Maybe you don't know. It doesn't look like that right now. It's very different now. And then we have a picture of Betsy Ross, and there she is sewing the flag. And right below, we have George Washington, the general. Betsy Ross made some changes. Then she showed the picture to General Washington. He liked it. Betsy Ross sewed the flag. And that was the very first Stars and Stripes. That is the story, and it's a good one. But is it true? Betsy Ross's grandson said it was. He said that Betsy told him the story when he was a little boy, and she was an old woman of 84. She was 84 years old when she told her grandson the story. But there is no proof for this story. So what do we know for sure? What is the fact? What is a fact? We don't know for sure if she was the person who created the first flag for the United States. We know that during the Revolution, the colonists used lots of different flags. Oh my goodness, look at on the page, look at all those different flags that they used. A lot of them look very similar, but they're not exactly the same. But once the colonies became the United States of America, the country needed one flag, the same flag for everybody. So, on June 14th, 1777, a decision was made. The flag was going to have 13 red and white stripes. Why do you think they chose for it to have 13 red and white stripes? The flag was also going to have 13 white stars on a blue background. Listen, one for each of the 13 colonies. Remember, there were only 13 colonies at that time. So each of those 13 stars represented one of those 13 colonies. Congress had picked the colors and the stars and stripes, but Congress did not say where the stars and stripes had to go. So the flag still did not always look the same. People could put them any way they liked. Sometimes the stripes were up and down, like this, like that picture they're showing. Sometimes the stars were in a circle, like this, but nobody minded. Up and down or side to side, the stars and stripes still stood for the United States. I'm on page 407. Over the years, the flag became more and more important to people. In 1812, the United States was at war with England again. British soldiers came to America. They sailed up our rivers. They marched down our streets. They even burned down the White House, the home of the president. Now I'm on page 408. On the night of September 13, 1814, British soldiers bombed a fort in Maryland. All that night, a man watched the fighting. His name was Francis Scott Key. He was afraid. Well, I would have been afraid too. What if the American soldiers in the fort gave up? And look at the top of the page, flag from battle at Fort McHenry. But in the early morning light, he saw the stars and stripes. It was still flying above the fort. He knew American soldiers had won the battle. Key felt very proud. He wrote a poem about the flag on the fort. The poem was The Star-Spangled Banner. Later, the poem was put to music. This song about our flag became a song for our whole country. So there's a picture of Francis Scott Key. He is the man who wrote the poem about the flag of the United States. And later on, that poem actually became a song, and now that is the national anthem, el himno nacional of the United States. Okay, turn the page. The flag that Francis Scott Key saw had 15 stripes and 15 stars. Why? Because by then there were 2 more states, Vermont and Kentucky. And then you can see that picture where they show you all of the different colonies or states that they had at that point. And notice that they added Vermont and Kentucky. Our country was getting bigger. People were heading out west. In time, more places were going to want to be states. Soon, there would be too many stripes to fit on the flag. Congress had to do something. So, in 1818, this is what was decided. The flag would go back to 13 red and white stripes. If they kept adding if they kept adding more stripes to their flag, they wouldn't fit. There were way too many states to have all of those stripes on their flag. So this is what they were doing. They decided to just keep 13 stripes. And in the blue box would be 1 white star for each state. Every time there was a new state, a new star would be added. Turn the page, page 412. At last, the stars and stripes looked the same everywhere it flew, and Americans were proud of their flag. They took the flag with them as they moved west. The flag crossed the Mississippi River and the great grassy plains and the Rocky Mountains. It made it all the way to California. More and more states were added to the country, and more stars were added to the flag. Why did they keep adding more and more stars to the flag? Because as there were more and more states, each star on the flag represented each of those new states. By 1837, there were 26 stars on the flag. If there were 26 stars on that flag, what does that mean? How many states were there? 26 states. By 1850, there were 31. Oh my goodness. Now look at the American flag on the bottom. And then they also give you a picture of the whole country and the different states that were created by 1850. Turn the page. One country, one flag. But then, in 1861, something happened. Our country split in two. 11 states in the South broke away from the United States of America. They started their own country. It was called the Confederate States of America. So what was the name of that new country that they had created? The Confederate States of America. Abraham Lincoln, that man in the picture, was president of the United States. He said all the states had to stay together. War broke out, the Civil War. It was a very sad time in the history of our country. Now, you remember at the beginning of the story, they were talking about a different war, the American Revolutionary War. That was a war against another country, against England. But the Civil War was really, really sad because it was one country fighting against each other, the same country fighting against each other. So that was really, really sad because they had finally reached freedom from a different country, but now they were fighting with one another. Let's see what happened. The 11 southern states stopped flying the Stars and Stripes. They had their own flag. In the North, some people wanted 11 stars taken off of the Stars and Stripes. Why do you think the people in the North wanted to take off 11 Stars and Stripes from their flag? Because those represented the states from the South, the states that had broken away. But Abraham Lincoln would not do that. He said the states would get back together. He was right. The Civil War ended in 1865. The North won. And the United States was one country under one flag again. Turn the page, almost done. On June 14th, 1877, the flag had a birthday, a big one. It was 100 years old. All across the country, people had picnics and parties and parades. June 14 became a holiday, Flag Day. Today, our flag has 50 stars for the 50 United States of America. Some flags are huge. One weighs 500 pounds. It is flown every 4th of July from the George Washington Bridge. The American flag flies in towns and cities from coast to coast. And that's not all. In 1969, 2 American astronauts were the first people ever to land on the moon. The astronauts took lots of moon rocks back to Earth. They also left something on the moon. Do you see the picture? What did they leave? The Stars and Stripes. And do you know what? Our flag is still flying there on the moon. And that's the story of the American flag.